So, when you think about the First Crusade, your mind probably jumps straight to the big march on Jerusalem, right? But here's the thing. While that was happening, a totally critical and often overlooked campaign was unfolding up in the north. Today, we're going to dive into how a really bold diversion by a couple of ambitious princes, Baldwin and Tancred, actually led to the creation of the very first Crusader State. And we're going to see why it was so crucial for the survival of the entire crusade. Let's break down how this massive gamble paid off. Here's how we're going to tackle it. First, we'll look at how the Crusades split in two. Then, we'll dig into the leadership, all their ambition, and all their drama. We'll see how Muslim disunity basically rolled out the red carpet for them, and we'll understand the huge role that local allies played. After that, it's all about Baldwin's wild move on Edessa and why this brand new state was such a strategic game changer. All right, so try to picture this. It's late 1097. The main Crusader army is fresh off a huge victory against the Seljuk Turks at Dorylaeum. The road to Antioch, their next big target, is basically wide open. But instead of everyone sticking together, a small group makes a pretty radical decision to just break away from the main force. And this right here really gets to the heart of it. You've got the main army, laser-focused on Antioch, sticking to the plan, but then you have Baldwin and Tancred, who just veer south into a region called Cilicia. So what was it? Was it just a reckless side quest driven by personal greed? Or was it a calculated, strategic move to protect the main army's flank and maybe secure some much-needed supply lines? That's the big question we're going to unpack.
To answer that, you've really got to start by looking at the leaders themselves. Because Crusader leadership, well, it was this fascinating and honestly pretty contradictory mix of military brilliance and just straight-up personal rivalry.
So, on one hand, these guys were really good at what they did. We're talking experienced commanders who knew how to win battles, how to secure supplies, and how to play politics. But, and this is a big but, their own ambitions constantly got in the way. The shared goal of the crusade often took a back seat to personal gain. I mean, the infighting between Baldwin and Tancred in Cilicia is the perfect example. Their rivalry was so bad it almost blew up the whole operation before it even got going. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. It really shines a light on the motivation here. For guys like Baldwin, who was a younger son with zero chance of inheriting land back home in Europe, this crusade was a massive opportunity. This wasn't just about faith. It was about forging a new destiny for himself, about carving out his own little kingdom in the East. But look, all the ambition and skill in the world wouldn't have meant a thing if the Crusaders had run into a unified, powerful enemy. Luckily for them, that's not what they found. They basically walked right into a political powder keg of Muslim disunity. You see, the great Seljuk Sultan Malik Shah had died, and his death shattered the whole region into these little warring factions. His nephews, who ruled Aleppo and Damascus, absolutely hated each other. And meanwhile, the one guy who should have been defending the area, the Sultan Kilij Arslan, was off fighting a completely different Turkish group somewhere else. There was just no coordinated defense. Nobody was working together, which let these smaller Crusader forces pick their targets and play the local rivalries against each other. Now for the third crucial piece of this puzzle. The Crusaders weren't just wandering through enemy territory alone. They found some very important and very willing allies among the local Christian populations. And this alliance was a total game changer. The local Armenian Christians gave them food and supplies, which was absolutely critical for surviving the incredibly long and difficult siege of Antioch that was coming up. They saw the Crusaders as liberators. And maybe most importantly of all, Baldwin didn't have to conquer his way into his new territory. He got a formal invitation from the ruler of Edessa to come and help defend the city. And this is the moment. This is where Baldwin's personal ambition smacks right into this incredible opportunity. He leaves Tancred behind in Cilicia, takes a small group of knights with him, and heads east to Edessa to answer that call. Okay, the speed of this whole takeover is just astonishing. Think about it. He shows up in early 1098. Within a single month, he gets himself adopted as the heir to the entire city. Then, just 1 month after that, the local ruler, Thoros, gets overthrown and killed in a revolt. And hey, how convenient, Baldwin, the invited guest, is right there to step in and become the first count of Edessa. It was an absolutely masterful political play. So, what did all this maneuvering and political scheming actually accomplish? Well, it achieved something that was hugely important, both historically and strategically. Baldwin had just established the County of Edessa, the very first Crusader State. This was a Latin Christian stronghold founded before Antioch was even captured and way before any crusader ever laid eyes on the walls of Jerusalem. This was a massive deal. And its strategic value was immediate and just immense. Edessa acted like a buffer, a shield, protecting the main army's northern flank while they were tied down at Antioch. It became a source for vital supplies. But probably its most important role was as a roadblock. Because when a gigantic Muslim relief army, led by a guy named Kerbaga of Mosul, came marching to crush the Crusaders, it had to deal with Baldwin's new county first. And as the historian Jonathan Riley Smith points out, Kerbaga wasted 3 precious weeks trying and failing to capture Edessa. That delay, it was absolutely critical. It bought the main Crusader army just enough time to finally capture Antioch and get ready for Kerbaga's army. You could make a very strong case that Baldwin's little sideshow actually saved the entire First Crusade from being completely wiped out. So we're left with this big question, aren't we? Who was Baldwin? Was he just a self-serving opportunist, a landless noble looking to make a name for himself? Or was he a pragmatic visionary whose actions, no matter what motivated them, ended up being essential to the Crusade's success? The evidence seems to point to a tricky answer. He might just have been both.